Classic Talk.
Good evening and welcome to the latest Classic Talk. It's quite a special one. We've got a guest on, and you'll have noticed, you'll recognise our guest from the telly. Alex Riley has worked on a lot of shows, notably Top Gear and Discovery Real Time's Classic Car Club. He's also worked on Classic Car Years and the Classic Car Show, and he's passionate about cars, obviously, which is why he's here. And best of all, owner of a TR7. So,
yes.
How are you doing, Alex? You okay?
I don't like people to mention the programme Classic Car Club. A lot of bad memories, a lot of demons. It had its highs, but there was a lot of lows in that show. But the others I'm very proud of, very, very proud of. Yes. Thank you for having me, by the way.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we've all obviously been in the same boat this past few months. How have you been getting your car fixed during lockdown, Alex?
Well, reading about cars, obviously. I'm a voracious reader, so I've been reading car magazines, both classic and modern. I subscribe to Car Magazine and Classic Cars. I've also got one of these magazine services, so I'm able to access lots of other car magazines. And I read books on cars, and I've been taking part in a regular Zoom chat with a group of mates, and we sort of set a couple of topics. And then we have to each find a couple of cars to throw into the mix. So last week we did something like an American I like and a beautiful piece of design or something like that. And so we have to come up with cars, and then we just start chatting about them and bring out all the trivia that we know and discuss the ins and outs. So actually that's been great, because in the normal course of business, I don't have that outlet normally. So actually, lockdown's been quite good for that, because I've not seen any of these people for several years, and so we've kind of reconnected, and we're kind of engaging on cars, and it's great. So I think next week it's worth a punt. We're going right back down to basics. We're looking for things that are a few £100 but could be a money pit or could be a lot of fun, and so that's what I'm thinking about now. I've already seen an MG ZS 180 for £500, but apart from that, I'm just thinking about cars a lot, which is.
Yeah.
What about you? How are you guys? Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, Alex, of those cars you were looking at, are they with a potential to buy one and flip it and enjoy it or something, or just in a fantasy sort of way, like a fantasy football or something?
Well, the first week we did it, we set ourselves. I mean, I'm not the person for flipping. I'm not a flipper. I'm a long-term commitment kind of a guy when it comes to cars and women, but that's another story. I am married. The first week the budget was a £10,000 car and a £20,000 car. But I mean, last week I did one that was like a Chrysler GS Special from 1955, of which there are probably 5 left in the world or something. This one was for sale for $700,000. So I mean, it's cloud cuckoo land. But worth a punt, a ZS 180 for £500.
I'm writing that
come
down.
on.
Yeah, definitely.
I checked out the MOT history, and it sounded pretty kosher. There was no like serious corrosion on a suspension mount, and serious oil leak from gearbox and all this. There's none of that. So
not a car I've owned then.
Yeah, anytime it says within 30 centimeters of something, that's where you kind of like walk away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something dangerous.
That's actually a foot. I mean, that's quite a long way from a prescribed area, isn't it? I mean, so. But then again, if I got it, I'd be thinking, well, I should have the belts done, and how much would that cost? And then, I've just seen an interior on eBay. Maybe I could get the Alcantara interior, which is my favourite interior for the MGZ cars. And maybe I could get that. And then, and where would it end? It'd be like, these tyres are rubbish. It drives so much better on proper tyres. How much? I could get them for only £75 a corner. And then it's no longer a £500 car, is it?
Precisely.
It's a rabbit hole, yeah.
Yeah, my ears picked up when you said MGZ and then you said S after it, so I thought I'd better listen. I thought you were going to go a bit early with a ZA or a ZB, but yeah, £500. I was like, what?
I went on the look when I worked at Top Gear. I was kind of like the MG Rover correspondent on Top Gear because I've always been sort of obsessed. You may have worked it out. British Leyland, Austin Rover, and all that. So anything that was to do with Rover Group first of all, and then MG Rover, I was the one. And we went to this hotel in St David's Bay, the St David's Hotel in Cardiff, and I was there for the launch of the Z cars, and I was there while they were the whole saga of MG Rover for the first couple of years. And then we went to Pembrey Circuit and drove all the Z cars on the circuit. And then we went back a couple of weeks later with Tiff and Vicky and Jason Barlow, and we did the story on it. And you know, so I mean, I love those cars. The ZR not so much, because that sort of came out as being probably the weakest of the three. Partly because the monocoque on the ZR is a lot less torsionally rigid than the other two. We were speaking to one of the engineers, and so that's why the ZS and the ZT were particularly good. And of course, the ZS has got the wishbone suspension and everything, but the ZR was a bit too floppy, so they couldn't quite get the specifics on the geometry, you know, spot on, and the damping spot on. But they're great fun cars, and bloody cheap. Cheap. See what I did there? I did it again without a swear word, so that you give you an option.
You don't have to cut it out. Speaking of that, Andy, you've been looking at classifieds lately. You're going to ask Alex about what excites him looking for cars. Not in general, just looking for cars.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It wasn't.
He's drink of water after that. Sorry about
Andy,
that.
Ask me a question.
I won't use the term excite, but I think what happened last year is I went and because of Brexit, I went ahead and I bought this thing called a VW Iltis, which is like a ex-German military 4x4 thing. Yeah, the forerunner to the Quattro. And I love all the history and stuff, and I love unusual stuff where you're the expert where nobody else is. That's the kind of key thing for me. Because then you can blag anything and people will, So I bought one of those last year, and I've been looking now I've got that, and I've been doing what you've been doing, which is like searching for things. Could I add this and add that and whatever, and put different tyres, and I've done all that, gone through that with that. And I'm now in the realms of looking for a weekend sports car. So I've been looking at things like I'm trying to think, Honda CRX Del Sol, Fiat Barchetta, Mazda Mark 1, Mazda MX-5 Mark 1s and Mark 2s, and looking at that kind of thing, because I like that wind in the hair kind of idea. The thing that I always found that attracted me to cars was always TV or popular culture. So the fact you've got a TR7, I automatically go to the Avengers, and it's the only reason I've got the new Avengers. The new Avengers. And that's the only reason why I've got it taped, especially American episodes where you get the American spec TR7s with a big stripe down the side and all that.
Yeah, that's right. The ones that were in Canada.
Yeah,
they filmed
that's right.
Several episodes in Canada. They probably got some sort of deal from the Canadian Tourist Board where they had, you know, you can come and make the program in Canada cheaper than you can make it in Britain, and so you know the series ends up in Canada because. One of the programs I'm about to make we might be filming that in a foreign country because of the advantages of money. Yeah.
So it's a special episode, but it's not that special because they've got a good deal. But if that excites me, what excites you? So if you're looking through the ads and looking at cars, is it like the MG Rover history, or is it something perhaps you've seen somebody else own one, like a famous racing driver, like a Jim Clark owned a Lotus Elan? Is it that background to it that excites you, or is it purely the kind of?
I love a good story. I love a good story. You know, I liked it. I mean, that's one of the things I like about the TR7 is that, you know, it's such a good story. It's kind of, you know, the hell of British Leyland and all the kind of factors that were against it, and the way that it's been maligned, and the could have beens and the what ifs and all that. And I sort of want to champion the underdog. That's a big thing for me. I mean, the thought of getting a BMW or a Volkswagen Golf or anything like that, something that nobody has, you know, nobody's going to go, what you got one of them for? But, you know, nobody's going to go, oh, you've got one of them Golfs. Oh, yeah. You know, it's kind of, for me, it's like, you know, I like the fact that not everybody likes the TR7. I like the fact that it's controversial. It's got a bit of baggage, but people don't really know the real story. They don't really know that it's so much better than people think. And I spend a lot of time reading old car magazines and putting it into context and trying to find little nuggets that I can throw into conversations that will prove to people once and for all that the TR7 is the greatest sports car that's ever been made. But yeah, things like, I mean, obviously when you're an impressionable youth, that is a great time to kind of become fixated on cars. And, you know, when I was a kid, my brother went to Kennings and brought back a brochure for the TR7. And I mean, it was so exciting, a two-seater sports car with pop-up headlights. I mean, there wasn't anything else like that. You know, a Ferrari, okay, but this was sort of almost tangible. You could almost imagine getting one. And then when I was a bit older, you know, they were on Saturdays, me and my mate Nick, we would go around all the used car forecourts and sit in all the cars that we liked. And if it was a TR7 flicking the headlights up and down, you know, it was just like, wow, this is kind of what it's like to be a grown-up and a kind of a young man about town, you know, with you know, I always think about like the Italian Job when Michael Caine drives the DB4 Valiantly and, you know, jumps over the side to go into his apartment in the middle of London with his beautiful European girlfriend. And you know, it's like a carefree, exciting lifestyle idea behind it. And that's very powerful for me.
Mm-hmm. And so are you selling out because yours is a convertible, isn't it? And isn't it a well-optioned convertible? But would you not prefer the poverty spec version made in,
there weren't that many options.
Well, the early version, wasn't it made in Liverpool? And weren't they? Was that at the time they would be set by strikes at that point? And so a lot of the early ones weren't they a little bit more dodgy?
Yeah. The original. I mean, when I was looking for my TR7, I wanted a fixed head. But they're very rare. There were so few fixed heads. So many were scrapped in favour of keeping a convertible. Convertibles usually have a much easier life. You know, they're kind of second cars. You know, the wife has one sort of idea. You know, she uses it to potter around. So they didn't do a lot of miles, and they tended to be more looked after, kept in a garage. You know, fixed heads were more and more abundant. I mean, you know, they built more fixed heads than convertibles because, you know, the convertible didn't come out until 79 in the US. And so the bulk of the sales were in the first few years. But yeah, the factory at Speak in Liverpool, absolutely notorious for terrible absenteeism, industrial unrest. And they were kind of unmanageable. The workforce was, you know, if they took against the new manager of the plant who came in just as the TR7 was being launched, and they decided they hated him and they wouldn't do anything for him. And the tales of people stealing things. There was a guy who used to, a tailor who lived in one of the pits, who you could go down and have a suit measured up and he'd make you a suit. I wonder if they were tartan. I wonder if they were made of, you know, like your shirts, which sort of like snipped it out of the trim shop. And, you know, so, but I mean, to be fair to them, the trouble with the TR7, I mean, we're not going to talk about the TR7 all night, even though it would be lovely. But the problem with the TR7 was it was kind of tested more than pretty much any car they'd ever done, but it was not tested in final spec. So they did all the cold weather testing and the Death Valley testing, but actually a lot of that was cars with no trim, cars with disguise. They didn't actually do the detail development on the cars. Gordon Birtwistle from Triumph said it could have probably done with 12 months of detailed development before it was launched, but they committed to a launch date. The company was losing money hand over fist. It was on the brink of collapse, and it did collapse at that point. And so they had to launch it. And thousands of cars would be built and go straight into a rectification shed to have new parts put on that were of a different spec, and there was all this kind of thing going on. And then Canley, the workforce at Canley, were so irritated that they hadn't got the job of building the new TR, they decided they would do everything they could to discredit the workforce at Speak. So they sent a load of substandard components, rubbish. I met a guy who worked at Triumph at that time, and I said, "Did they send a load of rubbish?" He said, "Absolute crap. It was crap that they sent. And if they ordered 5,000 near side wings, they'd send them 5,000 offside wings or whatever. You know, it was at that level. And you know, they're kind of like, yeah, I know what we'll do. We'll destroy the reputation of the factory, and we'll get to build the car whose reputation has been destroyed." So, I mean, it had no chance, really. Had no chance.
Yeah.
But yes, I do like watching TV programs about cars. I mean, for example, you know, Return of the Saint. There would be occasionally be a TR7, an episode of Return of the Saint. You know, any kind of exciting TV series, one character at some point would have a TR7 or an XJS or a Range Rover or some. In fact, there was a program called the Shillingbury Tales on, and I remember being very taken. Pardon?
Yeah. I watched it at the time because I think I'm about the same age as you. I watched it at the time, and also it was on TV a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, was it? And there's a rubber bumper MGB Roadster in it with road style wheels, and it's like I thought that looked fantastic. It looked fantastic. So I thought, but obviously it was a terrible car to drive with the rubber bumper and the raised ride height.
Just getting to the point when you said that about the TR7 being the greatest sports car, and there's always something to say about it. I could never say that about rubber bumpered midgets, which is my favourite midget. They are total crap, and I can't defend them, but that's my favourite, and it's the way it is, isn't it?
Well, exactly, because it just gets you at a moment, and if it's the right moment, then that's kind of your moment. I mean, precisely. You know, the MGB was actually a very credible car through the 60s, and then it all went pear-shaped. It should have been replaced in like 70, 71. They had plans, but of course, for corporate reasons and lack of investment and problems, you know, they never got round to doing the proper life cycles of cars, and that's why an MGB by 1975-6 in America did 0 to 60 in 18.5 seconds. You know, so no longer a sports car, but people, you know, they turn their nose up at the TR7, which could be an 11 in American trim. I'm just going to shut the window because it's loud. Terribly unprofessional.
It's also why, in some respects as well, that the successor to the MGB ended up being built by Mazda at the end of the day.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And it just shows that, you know, as a concept, it still has mileage. You know, people, you know, there was a feeling at the beginning of the 80s that, you know, the traditional roadster was dead and that it was hot hatches were the future and people weren't interested. And then, of course, you know, the MX-5 comes along and it's a phenomenon. And then, you know, there are a rush of imitators that come in over the next decade. So, I mean, obviously I saw
on a program the other day that I think it was on a Jay Leno slot, and they were talking about the MX-5 development, and they had the guy that designed it, and I didn't realize it was actually developed in Southern California, which, you know, something I didn't realize, but very much tested and tried. I
think competition between all the different bits of Mazda.
Yeah, that's right. They had different versions. They had a front wheel drive, and a rear wheel drive, and they had like a coupe and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And that one won out. But yeah, the different divisions, and then that one won through.